Across the Imperium of Man, there are 1,000 chapters of 1,000 fighting Astartes. Each has its own traditions, doctrines, and secrets. Most adhere to the Codex Astartes, but many deviate from it in minor or unique ways. There are some who ignore it entirely. But what if I told you one of the 1,000 chapters was not only working directly with a faction of the Ordo Melius, the demon hunters of the Inquisition, but what if I told you that if their secrets were revealed to the greater Imperium, they would be exterminated to the least and last, and by inquisitors of every branch of the Ordos. The secret is more terrible than that of the Blood Angels. It is more dangerous than the Dark Angels Fallen, or even the Wolfen of the Space Wolves. This chapter hail from the bloodline of Rogel Dawn, yet not once have they entered the Feast of Blades, and they will never be part of the Last Wall Protocol. They are an elite force even amongst the Astartes, a foil to any enemy of humanity, but devastating to one foe in particular. They are warriors without equal, but gamble the fate of not only their chapter, their planet, their system and sector, but possibly the very existence of the Imperium itself. Veterans of the brutal Badab War, they helped put down the rebellion of Huron. They deployed in full chapter strength during the Third War of Armageddon against the Orcs of Gazgul. They had forces on Cadia when it fell to Abaddon's 13th Black Crusade, and have Marines amongst Fleet Tertius of the Indomitus Crusade. Born of warp storms and inquisitorial machinations, they come from the cursed founding, and their name is the Exorcist chapter. Welcome, gentle listener, I am Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the forces, factions, and faces of the Warhammer 40k universe, the grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace, there is only time for war. Like the video and subscribe if you enjoy the style of presentation. I can assure you, I am not an AI voice nor writer. And today, we begin a run of entries concerning the more exotic chapters of the Adeptus Astartes, the Space Marines, both new and old. There is quite a bit of hubbub about this particular chapter, and some confusion concerning the alterations to their canon entries. Hence, I will be quoting from the latest information on this chapter straight from the horse's mouth, from Uncle GW and White Dwarf. Also, it saves me a few days of writing that have been allocated to trying to get out my regular serialized stories, being Cronin and Thaddeus. I am working on it, I am, so do give me the boon of your patience. But, as usual, let us kick off proceedings with a flavor piece, a wee tale to set the mood and show, not just tell, the individual attributes of this very unique chapter. From the Bold Library, a Faustian Pact. He had been out here for many hours now. The lieutenant awaited the landing craft of the Inquisitors, Ordo Melius. They were part of a secretive order, the Plutonians, but without them, the Exorcists would not exist as they did. Thus, they were honored guests. Though guest was an understatement. The Plutonians had a permanent presence on Banish since the earliest days of the chapter, since Trismegistus. It was a rarity for all of them to be off-world. For months, not even one of their order stalked the region of the Basilica Malefax, or even at their scattered research sites across the world of Banish. But so it has been since the tearing of the Great Rift. Nothing was even approaching normal anymore. The landing craft touched down and its ramps dropped. Down walked a half-dozen inquisitors, followed by their many attendants and entourage. Their leader peeled off from the procession and approached the lieutenant. They exchanged clipped pleasantries. Then the demon hosts were shoved down the ramp, passing the two. The lieutenant would never be comfortable with these poor wretches, no matter how tactically important they were to the war against the dark powers. He forgot himself for a second and whispered, "There could be a worse fate, but if there is, I know it not." The Inquisitor followed his eyes and then stated, "Alas, I know of many. That is the weight of the Rosetta, the calling. As you may espy my knowledge and feel the shadow of jealousy, I could be drawn to envy your purity of purpose and conviction, or even the divinity that resides within you, the seed. But we were not created to do the same work. We fight the same enemy, but wage different wars. Ignorance is the greatest shield, Lieutenant. Obliviousness the perfect impenetrable armor. Do not ponder or coax your mind into frivolous things like thought. A blank mind is an open receptacle to the Emperor's will. A busy mind may be walked down alleyways it should never have gone." The Inquisitor now walked after his fellow Ordo members, the lieutenant at his shoulder keeping pace. "The demon Primarchs walk the sands of Sotiarius, the ash plains of Armageddon, the cobbled streets of Ultramar, slithering on Sabist. We have so little time. It is good to see your chapter take the time to return to strength. You are sorely needed. With the grey stretched to breaking point, we look to the Exorcists to fill the breaches." "How many?" The lieutenant responded. 30. "They are prepared?" asked the Inquisitor. "Affirmative. My order will need to prepare for the ordeal. Quarters are ready, as are chambers in the Hall of Temptation." The Inquisitor nodded contemplatively. "Then we shall begin in one cycle. Let us hope the Emperor can save more of this cohort than the last. Though the broken ones are useful, they pale into insignificance next to the utility of your brethren." The lieutenant responded by rote. "The Emperor protects." "Yes, my friend. That he does. That he does indeed." A day passed, and then the aspirants were made ready. Each in a separate chamber, each strapped to a table, each now dreading what was to occur. They had many of the extra organs of the full marine, but not all. Thus they were already so much more than human in body, their exhaustive training making them so much more in mind and soul. Hardened, fearless, yet now their true test came. Many would not survive this process. The Inquisitors marched individually into each chamber one by one. Around each lashed aspirant were drawn circles and wards of vile providence, ancient power. Incense filled the air to near choking point, creating a thick fog that obscured all. Then the chanting began. Words not meant to be spoken by mortals, never meant to be heard. The glottal tongue, the words of the enemy, demonic cant. Everything was done with astonishing levels of control and precision. Not one syllable was dropped, not 1 millimeter of word inaccurate or incomplete. The Inquisitors had performed this rite again and again in these very halls. It was a process perfected over millennia. In each chamber, a demonic sentience was conjured, abjured, then forced into the body of every last aspirant. Then the 12 hours of waiting began. Screams of obscenities and howls of pain and profanity echoed from the tongues of all possessed, their bodies racked with mutation, blasphemous signs and stigmata. The men who would be exorcists were tortured by the dark souls encased within their minds, cohabiting their bodies, burning their souls. Some were so far gone that auto-targeting flamers blurted their Promethean fires to consume those who failed. Others were left as gibbering madmen, useful for nothing but to be transported to the great ship the Purgatomb, to become hosts for more demons in the future, their bodies jails for myriad enemies of reality as time passed. But those who were strong enough, devout enough, pure enough, a mere 1 in 5 in this cohort, but far more than usual, they would have the demon exorcised from them if they had not cast out the infestation through sheer willpower alone. These survivors would go to the next stages, would gain the black carapace and then, eventually, the warplate of the Astartes. They would be taught the 666 verses of the Liber Exorcismus. Then they would join the battle line, and they would bring the Emperor's justice to the foul all across the galaxy, for they would be exorcists. Index Astartes. The Exorcist. Forged during the Dark Founding, the Exorcist chapter of Space Marines harbor a dark secret. Though strong of will and virtually immune to corruption, the depths to which they sink to achieve such stalwartness border on heretical. But perhaps to defeat your enemies, first you must know them. The Exorcists are one of a handful of Space Marine chapters who trace their creation to the shadowy 13th founding. Historical records of this obscure event are scant and often contradictory, so it is little wonder that the 13th is commonly known as the Dark Founding. Indeed, the full details of the Exorcist Foundation are not widely known even within the chapter itself, and those who are privy to such secrets remain tight-lipped. This is in keeping with the Exorcist's customary silence on all matters that might attract wider scrutiny. Such secrecy is a necessary defense, as although the Exorcists are renowned first and foremost as a heroic and accomplished Space Marine chapter, they fulfill a second clandestine role as hunters of demons. If knowledge of this mission and of the disturbing manner in which the Exorcists prepare themselves for it were to spread beyond their homeworld, many Imperial agents would denounce the chapter outright. Yet the likelihood of such a discovery is reduced by the fact that most archives concerning the Exorcist founding are either mysteriously closed or missing entirely. In the absence of hard facts, speculation has mounted, and there are some who view the Exorcist with mistrust, noting that they seem to have been present in more than their fair share of war zones blighted by chaos. Combined with the rare glimpses of the Exorcist's strange traditions and cult practices, this has been enough to provoke accusations of heresy. However unfounded, such ideas have found support amongst some of the Imperium's most zealous defenders, including the Black Templars. This is a point of considerable irony, as in truth, the two chapters share the same primogenitor, the noble Primarch Rogel Dawn. Conceived as a Codex-compliant chapter, the Exorcists were created from the resilient gene seed of the Imperial Fists, and they soon distinguished themselves as worthy scions of Dawn. In the early years of the chapter, the Exorcists proved adaptable to many different strategic challenges, whether fighting alongside other Imperial forces or blazing their own trail of destruction through the Emperor's foes. But when the Exorcists deployed to liberate the demon-racked world of Totem 4, the fate of the chapter changed forever. The colonists of the Totem system had long prided themselves on their independent spirit, and by the time they raised the alarm that they were under attack, the invasion led by the greater demon Keriath the Shrouded was already well advanced. The Exorcists were first to respond, and upon landing on the cardinal planet Totem 4, they were immediately beset by a huge host of Tzeentchian warp spawn. Though these eldritch horrors had the numbers to overwhelm the Astartes, the Exorcist's resilience of spirit was formidable even by the measure of Space Marines. Whether by some quirk of genetics or the invisible will of the Emperor himself, they found themselves able to overcome the corrupting touch of sorcerers and demons in situations others would deem hopeless. So it was on Totem 4, as the Exorcist advanced boldly through the planet's blasted cityscapes, taking considerable physical damage but never yielding to the assaults their twisted foes made on their minds. Angered by the Exorcist's strange resistance to the mutagenic gifts of Sinch, Keriath the Shrouded sought out their leader, Chapter Master Enoch Trismegistus, and hurled his entire psychic essence into the stoic Space Marine's mind. Even the heightened resolve of the Exorcist was no defense against such a powerful entity, and the Chapter Master succumbed to the possession. Yet Keriath's victory was not complete. Though the demon spoke through his host's mouth and did much damage to the Exorcist's position, internally Trismegistus battled on, fighting a desperate battle of wills against the demon and putting its own defenses to the test. While this ordeal took a grave toll on the Chapter Master's psyche, it gifted him with profound insights into the weaknesses of his foe, and awoke a measure of his own latent psychic ability. In a feat of immense mental strength, he reached out to the mind of Chief Librarian Goetos, and together, the two Exorcists drew out Keriath and banished him from real space. The consequences of this episode were momentous for both Trismegistus and his chapter. Unknown to the Exorcist, a radical inquisitorial sect known as the Plutonians had already developed suspicions concerning the chapter's unusual spiritual resilience and had embedded an informant in a menial position within chapter command. When the spy reported on Trismegistus's possession, the Plutonians acted swiftly, asserting their authority as Ordo Malleus agents to leave the chapter master of command and establish purpose-built quarters on the chapter homeworld of Banish. Here Trismegistus was interrogated relentlessly. Only after many months was the Space Marine absolved and reinstated as chapter master of his brethren. This was only the beginning, however. In the course of their interrogations, the Plutonians had laid out to Trismegistus their own radical theories concerning demonic possession and how its controlled use might be a paradoxical weapon in the war against chaos. Perhaps they broke their silence out of vanity, expecting the chapter master to face the flames of oblivion soon enough. But Trismegistus had drunk of Keriath the Shrouded's vast intellect and realized the warped genius of the Inquisitor's plan. Once his purity had been proven beyond doubt, he made his own radical proposal to the Plutonians, pledging his incorruptible brethren as partners in their cause. Acting in utmost secrecy, the Plutonians therefore remained on Banish permanently, to oversee a program that would be met with outrage if known to the wider Imperium. Entering a forbidden facility known as the Halls of Tempering, each new Exorcist recruit and each compliant existing warrior would be subjected to demonic possession like Trismegistus had been, albeit by entities of much lesser power and under tighter controlled conditions. After a period of intense monitoring and scrutiny, the Inquisitors would then drive out the demon and return the victim to the care of the chapter for a full phase of recovery and reflection. So began a unique initiation ritual that continues to this day. Those who successfully emerge from the ordeal bear disturbing physical and mental scars, but also exhibit qualities that, in the Plutonians' view, justify the brutal ordeal. The process seems to render the Exorcist still more fearless and resilient to demonic corruption, and it gifts each battle brother with personal revelations of the nature of demonkind that serves them well in later clashes with the ruinous powers. Whatever the true extent of these changes, the Exorcists maintain a stony silence on all matters of chapter training and tradition, knowing that even a single breach of security could be their undoing. Soon after the Plutonians began their work, it became clear that the Exorcists were not just capable of enduring demonic possession. Their corporeal forms also proved strangely suited to retaining any entities that were not successfully banished. In a series of horrifying experiments, the Plutonians found that the living bodies of fabled initiates were able to hold indefinite numbers of demons prisoner, some subjects becoming so saturated with warp spawn that they were sustained in a state of deathless torture, their bodies enduring for centuries, while their minds broke apart. Even in this ignoble end, however, the Exorcists found a use for their fallen sons. If these broken ones could not serve the chapter on the battlefield, they could at least live on as vessels of imprisonment, harboring in their flesh the myriad entities driven out of successful initiates. Immortal beings that might otherwise return to the warp and scatter the Exorcist's deepest secrets far and wide. Thus arose the most chilling of all practices conducted within the halls of tempering, and over the millennia, the numbers of accursed broken ones have continued to grow. Accommodating such vessels of evil on Banish would be unthinkably dangerous, as the apothecarian is concerned with retaining only the untarnished gene seed of successful initiates. Broken ones are dispatched into deep space under maximum security protocols to live out their untold years within a secret prison craft known as the Purgatomb. Within the pitch-black bowels of this immense drifting bastion, the broken ones are left to writhe and scream, locked within the hyperdense walls of their warded cells. For some 5 millennia, the Purgatomb has served the Exorcist's grim purposes, and though its location has become known on occasion, its abominable contents have never yet become known to any ally or enemy. This is well, as if even a single broken one were to escape, the consequences for the chapter, perhaps even the Imperium itself, would be catastrophic. The era Indomitus. Since the emergence of the Great Rift, the galaxy has been beset by warp horrors and heretical uprisings on an unprecedented scale, and the renowned incorruptibility of the Exorcists has never been more in need. As a result, Exorcist strike forces have been deployed far and wide, some even plunging into the shadows of the Imperium Nihilus, their mission to combat the unholy forces rumored to prey upon Imperial worlds there. When the Primaris reinforcements were dispatched to the Space Marine chapters, the Torchbearer fleet bound for Banish met with intense and repeated demonic assaults, to the extent that the rogue traders traveling with the flotilla came to regard the mission as cursed. Privately, even the Adeptus Custodes attached to the fleet muttered that such attention from the dark gods was ominous indeed. In the heavy fighting that resulted, all of the fleet's grey shields fell in action, and when the battered torchbearer vessels reached the Exorcists, the Magi Biologus were able to present the chapter with only the technologies behind the creation of Primaris Space Marines, with no living proof of the warriors Belisarius Call had prepared. All the same, this gift of technology suited Chapter Command and the Plutonians well. Raising their own Primaris initiates on Banish would enable the close monitoring of training from its earliest stages, to watch for any signs of incompatibility with the initiation rite. No such signs came. The Exorcist's innate resistance to demonic influence seemed present in the Primaris recruits also, further indicating that a peculiarity in the chapter's gene seed was responsible for the anomaly. As to the root causes of this phenomenon, and why similar gifts do not present in the Imperial Fists or other successors, no further light was shed. Nonetheless, the strange initiation rites left their mark on the Primaris subjects also. In war zones where they fought alongside other chapters whose battle brothers had endured no forced exposure to demons, subtle differences between the Primaris elements were apparent. Time and again, those of the Exorcist seemed more stalwart in the face of warp spawn, but they were also more prone to unexplained decisions and turns of mood. Combat Doctrine. Despite their superficial similarities with the demon-hunting mission of the Grey Knights, the combat doctrine of the Exorcists differs greatly from that of the Sons of Titan. From their inception, they were conceived as a chapter with wide-ranging strategic capabilities modelled on the tenets of the Codex Astartes. where each Grey Knight is a psychically gifted warrior, equipped with weapons and artifacts of extreme rarity. Exorcist Space Marines possess no specialized resources other than their hardened spiritual resolve and their wealth of archived lore. Whether deployed against demonic foes or otherwise, the Exorcists strive to be a step ahead of their enemies at all times. The key to this doctrine is effective reconnaissance, and the Exorcists make extensive use of the larger numbers of neophyte scouts necessitated by the chapter's merciless recruitment process, deploying them behind enemy lines on covert intelligence missions. Indeed, the Exorcists also ask their scout forces to endure combat duties that would normally fall to fully fledged battle brothers, ostensibly to hone their martial skills, but in reality, to temper their spirits and weed out weakness before they pass through the possession ritual. A favored tactic is to work neophyte forces into positions where they appear vulnerable and then reveal them, drawing out the enemy by giving them a false sense of tactical advantage before crushing their advances with the full weight of the Exorcist's main force. In the era Indomitus, the Exorcists have integrated the capabilities of primary Space Marines into their existing doctrines, notably by designating their entire 10th Company as a Vanguard Company. These Phobos armored units have become a natural component of the infiltration missions that precede Exorcist assaults, while other Primaris elements such as Hellblasters and Repulsor tanks lend unprecedented strength to the chapter's battle line. Long before the Primaris technologies of Belisarius Core reinforced the chapter, the Exorcists fought alongside Ordo Malleus forces seconded to the Plutonian sect, and this close cooperation still continues on occasion. Whether the Inquisitors in these instances deploy purely as allies, or to monitor behaviors that have concerned them within the Exorcist's own ranks, their specialized knowledge and potent war gear have proven decisive to several victories in the chapter's history. Organization. The organizational structure of the Exorcists is largely compliant with the Codex Astartes, with a command hierarchy comparable to any conventional Space Marine chapter. This conformity continues with regard to the company structure outlined in the Codex, except that the Exorcists maintain 2 additional companies beyond the traditional 10. Due to the high influx of recruits required to ensure that sufficient numbers of Battle Brothers survive the Exorcist's unnatural selection process, the 11th and 12th companies solely comprise scout novitiates. Different scouts units serving within these companies will be at different stages of their initiation. Some will have passed out of the halls of tempering and into a gamut of physical and spiritual assessments overseen by the Master of Recruits and Reclusium staff. Others are as yet unaware of the demonic encounter they will soon have to face and assume the close vetting of their conduct and the intensity of their earlier combat missions to be typical of any chapter. In addition to this organizational quirk, the Exorcist's 10th Company differs to those of most other chapters in that, since the Primaris technology reached the chapter, it has been a company entirely composed of Vanguard Space Marines. In response to this, the chapter's unorthodox 11th and 12th companies expanded their neophyte numbers to make up the shortfall. Gene Seed. The Exorcists trace their genetic lineage to Rogel Dawn, the Primarch of the Imperial Fists, and echoes of Dawn's legendary resolve can certainly be seen in the incorruptible nature of the chapter's warriors. Yet, like so many details of their heritage and identity, the Exorcists give no outward signs of this bloodline. Dawn's name makes no appearance in battle cries or pageantry, and the chapter maintains no fraternal links with the Imperial Fists or any of their many successors. Indeed, the truth is not even widely known amongst the rank and file of the chapter, and it is only upon induction into the first company that Exorcists are formally told of their descent from Dawn. This gift of knowledge is seen as a mark of great honor by veterans accustomed to the secretive ways of their chapter, and they guard it with their lives. Homeworld. Though the Exorcists spend extensive periods as fleet-based campaigners, their permanent base of operations is the feral world of Barish, in the Narasima Straits. Boasting little in the way of natural assets or valuable infrastructure, Banish has proven an inconspicuous sanctum for a chapter as insular as the Exorcist, being likely to draw unwanted attention from over-inquisitive allies. In addition, the primitive human tribes of Banish have proven themselves a worthy recruitment pool of the chapter's particular needs. These hardy nomads were descended from imperial prospectors stranded on the planet in an earlier age, and centuries of isolation have made them a regressive but highly self-reliant people who have forgotten the promise of technology and galactic exploration. Beneath the steaming acid swamps of Banish lies the Exorcist fortress monastery, the Basilica Malefics. This mysterious underground complex is unusual for being home to not only the strategic headquarters, armory, and other facilities typical of most Space Marine homeworlds, but also the extensive precincts of the Plutonian Inquisitors. It is here that Exorcist initiates are ushered into the gloomy depths of the halls of tempering. Full details of the arcane technologies housed in this place of possession are known only to the Ordo Malleus radicals and senior figures in chapter command, and those Exorcists who emerge do so with no memory of the means by which the Inquisitors work. The remainder of the fortress monastery houses all of the infrastructure required by any orthodox Space Marine chapter, along with a number of peculiarities. At the heart of the complex, a quadriform walkway called the Cloister of Scars links together the chapter's training grounds, living quarters, and command centers, while the huge atrium at the cloister's center acts as a burial ground for the battle slain, with dimly lit spaces reserved for private meditation. The outer walls of the cloisters are studded with many stone archways of varying size and grandeur. The larger of these lead off to the great institutions of the chapter: the Reclusium, Apothecarian, Armory, and the Council Chamber where the chapter master presides. The mightiest doorway of all leads to the chapter Librarius. Behind thick blast doors sentryed at all times, the chief librarian and his subordinates preserve detailed records of every Exorcist battle, paying special attention to any demonic foes encountered and the methods used to defeat them. While all Space Marines seek to know their enemies and capitalize on their weaknesses, the Exorcists take this belief to the extreme, and their diligent accumulation of occult lore will be considered heretical by many chapters. The librarians understand the risks, and the dim vaults that harbor such tracts are wreathed in hexagrammatic wards and a perpetual haze of purifying incense. In truth, arcane subject matter forms a relatively small part of the chapter's record-keeping. The Exorcists are a well-rounded fighting force, equipped to engage all manner of enemies, and through keen analysis of chapter records, they strive to be as prepared as possible for any threats they might face. Scarred in mind and body. Even the most resilient Exorcist initiates, who emerge from the halls of tempering, carry physical and mental stigmata for life. The exact nature of these wounds can vary as widely as the nature of demons themselves, with each warp entity leaving its own uniquely malign imprint. Initiates possessed by beings of a particularly duplicitous nature may be left with unshakable paranoia that they are being plotted against, while some of those who hosted demons of rage and wrath afterwards find their own bloodlust difficult to subdue. Beneath their power armor, Exorcists bear unnatural physical scars and blemishes. Some of these take the shape of fell runes that throb with a dull pain in the presence of warp spawn. Others are tiny lacerations that never truly heal and require frequent repurification. Discolored eyes and patches of scaly flesh are not uncommon, and some survivors even experience spiny growths sprouting from their head or limbs, while Exorcists regard these anomalies as marks of honor signifying the defeat of the unholy. To prying eyes they would be sure signs of heresy, and the afflicted are careful to conceal or replace with augmetics any stigmata that would draw attention. Not all of the consequences of possession are burdensome. Many a hostile psyker has found the minds of Exorcist Space Marines to be particularly hard to corrupt, though they do not understand why. It has ever been rumoured that Exorcist battle brothers possessed heightened psychic ability and wield arcane forces on the battlefield, but such claims cannot be substantiated. Like other Codex-compliant chapters, the Exorcist tolerates psychic activity only amongst Liberius personnel, and any sign of deviance are quickly stamped on. The Swords of Epiphany. The initiation process of the Exorcist has always had its failures, though most of these unfortunates die during their ordeal, or worse, become broken ones. One dark episode in the chapter's early history demonstrated how dangerous these fallen souls could be. The initiative came from Cardinal Rodrigo Nesson, a trusted agent of the ecclesiarchy attached to the Plutonians on Banish. When Nesson witnessed the changes that came over those who had succumbed to possession, he experienced a revelation. To his mind, these beings were a higher breed of warrior who could take humanity forward. Guided by the whispers of the dark gods, Nesson gathered up a contingent of these condemned initiates before they could be destroyed, and he escaped with them to the warp, baptizing his foul host the Swords of Epiphany and swearing them to the service of chaos. The existence of this warband could not be tolerated by the Exorcists. More than staining chapter honor, the heretics might have retained memories of the hellish practices carried out in the Basilica Malefax and spread damning rumors. Thus began Armadel's Purge, led by Captain Yevon Armadel, which hounded the Swords of Epiphany wherever they were sighted, until at last the twisted cabal was declared extinct. The Orison Cults. Alongside the great institutions whose doors lined the cloister of scars, smaller, simpler portals give access to meeting places known as Orison Shrines. In these, battle brothers initiated into specific Orison subcults reflect in different ways upon their duties as space marines, and they work to expand the bespoke libraries each Orison maintains. These cults are an important part of chapter identity, and they open their doors to any exorcist who would consult their records or learn more of their traditions. To outside observers, the Exorcist's use of esoteric titles such as Brother Initiate might hint at clandestine layers of battlefield organization, but such terms are honorifics signifying Orison membership. Nonetheless, certain Orisons do maintain historic associations with particular battlefield roles. Many First Company veterans belonging to the prominent Enochian Guard, for example, while the cult known as the Obelisk Thelamus tracks Devastators and Tech Marines in greater number, and the Broken Tower cult is almost exclusively formed from Liberius personnel. Membership of one Orison does not preclude membership of another, and highly regarded heroes of the chapter may have multiple Orison honors to their name. The Enochian Guard. The most prestigious of the Exorcist Orison subcults is the Enochian Guard, named after the chapter's first chapter master, Enoch Trismegistus. The Shrine of the Enochians is the oldest and largest of its kind, with an archive particularly rich in occult lore. Although its doors are open to any battle brothers who wish to broaden their knowledge or pay their respects, tradition holds that only members of the First Company or other high-ranking notaries may be initiated into the Orison itself. Rank alone does not qualify an exorcist for membership of the Enochian Guard, however. Only those known to have slain a demon in single combat are considered worthy candidates, and even then, prospective initiates must be vouched for by at least 2 other members. Like all Orisons, the Enochian Guard are careful not to draw overt attention to their membership with grand visual display, so they keep battlefield markings limited. Nonetheless, before battle it is traditional for Enochians to adorn themselves with excerpts from the Liber Exorcismus and other hallowed writings in the chapter's keeping. Some brothers choose to carve these directly into their armor and gun casings, while others ink the words onto long streamers of parchment, which they then wrap around their limbs and weapons, believing that the verses will imbue them with righteous strength, where the Emperor's light is furthest from reach. Chapter Master Emir Vasafon. The current chapter master of the Exorcist is Emir Vasafon, a taciturn warrior who commands deep respect from those around him, though few understand the inner workings of his mind. Some 300 years have passed since Vasafon completed his initiation as an exorcist, but the seasoned space marine is still haunted by the guttural voice of the demon that possessed him for 7 days. This malignant entity of Nurgle made many smug claims to Vasafon before being banished, and the fact that several of these have since come true is an enduring source of concern to the chapter master, so much so that he pursues the destruction of the plague god's servants with particular zeal. Vasafon was the first member of chapter command to cross the Rubicon Primaris, considering it his duty to endure the procedure before asking his peers to do the same. Clad in crimson gravis plate and armed with the relic blade Voidbane, the reborn Vasafon is a formidable force on the battlefield. And now to sum up. I, like most of the Inquisition, if they knew, consider this chapter and the Plutonians that support this madness to be a threat to the Imperium. Their ship, the Purgatum, it holds hundreds of marine aspirants and other failures, the Broken, but each holds multiple demons. Imagine that. Being stuck in a cell for all eternity, sitting there with more and more demons forced into your body to share the confines with you and your soul. I can think of no more terrible punishment. The Exorcists have captured as many dark souls as possible, holding them in this realm to remove their influence in another, the warp. The Exorcists have been doing this for millennia. Every demon they catch, every one they exorcise, they attempt to bring back, and then place in one of these broken ones. But what if they were all freed at once? What if that ship exploded? What if all the accumulated knowledge of those demons should return to their cohorts, their dark patrons? How the halls of the four hells would fill with returned demons bearing gifts of knowledge, of the Imperium, its regimes, its secrets, its Astartes. Who knows how much the demons have learned while trapped inside a mind with a marine, aspirant or veteran. The galaxy is still recovering from the tear across its midriff, the Cicatrix Maledictum, the Eye of Terror, the other boundaries damaged by the birth screams of the Chaos Guards. As I have stated previously in my How Warhammer Ends video, I believe the walls between the Immaterium and Materium have dangerously weakened. Yes, the Necrons attempt to reinforce them again in their regions of stilling, the prior nexuses, or nexes, but the second psychic awakening of humanity has eroded it further. Could the simultaneous release of so many demons create another rent in the already fractured walls separating the two dimensions? Or would it simply be the last tear that unravels the whole screen? Let us hope the Exorcist chapter remain loyal. Yet their sects sound so very much like warrior lodges, and the Plutonians may well drag down the chapter, as they are only one misstep from falling. But what if the Purgatome, through coercion or betrayal, should fall into the hands of chaos? Let us hope we never find out. I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. As always, like and subscribe and tip if I have earned your bounty. And do check out the links in the description, for other videos and, of course, savings on purchasing. And, most importantly of all, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.